Let the crowd in.
Hey, Germaine.
Hey, Germaine.
There she is. Hi, Germaine.
Hi.
And I'm so sorry to be party to the party, but I am here.
Welcome.
Well, we understood you were probably a little bit, it was a little nerve-wracking if you were trying to get in and stuff. So we're just glad you're here now.
Yeah, I was just having some technical difficulties, but I'm better.
Yeah, good.
All right, so let's do for now, everybody go ahead and go off camera, except Jeff, why don't you stay on? And then, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. And then once you come on for your portion, you can just turn your camera and your mic back on. Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome you to the webinar 2 and also 3, which is going to be on Thursday for the Developing the Inclusive Workplace. I am really curious to know who may have attended for the launch. If you could click on the bottom where the raise hand icon is and let us know if you were here last week or last month. I'm sorry, March 22nd. We'd love to know if we have some second timers today. We do want to welcome you today. We're so happy to have you here. We do want to recognize the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. We are partnering with them. They've had a tremendous impact on this series, and we're so grateful for them allowing us to be a part. We thank you for, I'm going to look and see the hands real quick, if anybody was here. So we may have a lot of new timers. Oh, we do have a few. Thanks for coming back, you guys. We hope that you'll really spread the news about our upcoming events. We have another event, which is going to be a repeat of this session on Thursday. So if you enjoy it today, make sure you let your colleagues and friends know about our session Thursday. My name's Laura Schroeder, and I am with O'Neill Communications. I'm the producer of the series, and I do work with O'Neill as a content strategist and producer. I'm going to support the panel mostly today, and behind the scenes is Devika Rao. She's our president and CEO of O'Neill. She's here to support, so if you have any questions, you can privately chat with her. If you click on the link for panelists and host, please feel free to send her any messages if you're having any kind of technical difficulty at all. Otherwise, you can chat to the whole group, to every attendee. We're really going to be using chat today, and we really hope that you'll participate with us. I do want to remind you that we have sessions coming up. As we go throughout, Devika will also include the link so that you can register. If you haven't registered for all the sessions yet, we'd love to invite you to do so. Even if you don't know that you can attend all of them, it's always good to go ahead and register for all the sessions. It's very easy to do when you click on the link, and your chat, not your chat, I'm sorry, your link will be available to you at hand for any of those days that you can sign on. We really are building on the series, but it's not an absolute that you come to every single one, but we certainly want to invite you to as many as you can attend. Today is really an opportunity for a conversation, and we want to invite you to a conversation. We want you to understand that this session here is not a lecture. It's really the development of a learning community. We want to invite you today to use your tools. The primary tool we'll use today is chat. Please use chat. There's going to be activities. Our presenters will ask questions, and we really want to get you engaged in the conversation. But please also feel free to use the emoticons. That's a great way to let your presenters know that you like something they said, that you also maybe have an experience that you're relating to them in some way. So give them some love by using the emoticons today. And then also, we may have at the very end, we might have an opportunity for raising your hand, and we may unmute your mic for some more discussion, but probably we'll save that for the end just so that we get all of our content in. I want to introduce our speakers today. I'm not going to introduce each of them individually. They're going to be doing that as we move throughout the session. You're in for a treat. Our presenters today represent state agencies, employees, employers, and especially advocates. So we really just want to welcome our speakers. They've done a lot of work on the session. You'll see that in their presentations. So I wanted to just thank you guys so much for being here today. Now I'm going to introduce our host. For those of you who came last time, Jeff is our host for the entire series. He's not a stranger to many folks in this arena, so you will enjoy Jeff as you always do. Jeff's going to be adding to the conversation. He is a consultant on disability rights. He does have his website here if you're interested in staying in touch with Jeff. He's an entrepreneur and an author. And a speaker on disability rights. And we really are happy that he agreed to be a part of the series. So Jeff, in addition, I want to thank everybody for signing in today. And thank you, Jeff, for taking it away. And he's going to start us out today. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Arsenault. I do have cerebral palsy, and a little brief background about where I come from. I was in management, both retail and distribution, worked for Walgreens Distribution Center and Bi-Lo grocery store for about 20 years. And I moved to Louisiana about 7 years ago and kind of recreated my life. And I did that by looking in the mirror and realizing what I needed to change about me. And what I needed to change was I needed to own my disability. And 7 years later, you know, I'm doing webinars, I'm an author, I'm still working in retail. We're working on that. But what I enjoy doing is using my background as a tool to move the needle forward as far as inclusiveness in the workplace. And I woke up this morning so excited. And the reason why I'm excited is I have 3 presenters that I've done previous work with, and I actually have a relationship. And I want to kind of just tell you that the enthusiasm that I have in part of this webinar, it's going to be really engaging. It's going to be really interactive. And I'll go deeper into this later on. It's critical that we use the chat box, make comments. If you're questioning things, we want to know that. We want to know what you need to know to move that needle forward. Before I introduce our first speaker guest, who I'm really excited to be working with again, I want to go over why are we on this call? What do we want to leave here an hour and a half later with what is success for people with disabilities? What is inclusion to me? What is it to y'all? And where's the gap? Consider people with disabilities when we get into the conversation of employment. What do we need to do to get in that conversation? So, and another thing, how are we gauging what we're doing? What's the metric behind what I learn now and a year from now? How do I measure whether this is working? All right, without further ado, I got the honor of introducing a friend of mine. We actually worked together on a project a few years ago, right when I was new in Louisiana. And I just want to share with you something about, let me back up real quick. If you were on a seminar 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, let us know. Let us know who you are. Let us know what provider, what business you're in. Because we would, and what you wish to learn. Let's get engaged with that message. So Wilbur, let me tell you something about Wilbur. There's one thing about me that's really important, and it's appearance. You know, when I meet you, what do I see? Wilbur always looks good and always looks professional. And when I worked with Wilbur, we worked on a team. And probably the most important thing about Wilbur that got my eye is he took on a leadership role from day one. And at that time, he wasn't a leader. Now, 3 or 4 years later, guess who's a leader? Wilbur Johnson. Without further ado, Wilbur, welcome to the seminar.
Wow. Good morning. Good morning. How y'all doing? My name is Wilbur Johnson. I do want to thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you so much and everyone for the opportunity, for this amazing opportunity. So I'll be talking about my career journey. And as you know, my name is Wilbur Johnson. And how do inclusive workplace have helped me to succeed? We're gonna move to the next slide. So about me, as you know, as I said earlier, my name is Wilbur Johnson. I am 24 years old. I have an intellectual disability. I am a self-advocate. I currently work at Human Development Center as the Administrative Coordinator 1. It's going amazing. We're gonna move to the next slide. So I am more than my disability. I am more, I am more, I am more. I work hard every day to become more than my disability because I'm more. I'm an overcomer. Let's move to the next slide. So how did I get here? My career journey has only proven that I can overcome obstacles to succeed. So stop number one, I went through a apprenticeship program called Paycheck. We had did a couple of programs at HDC. It went through it's like with adult transition from after high school. It support young adults. It has also helped me become more independent and to get my first job, to have the first, I work at Audubon. I also did an intern at UMC Hospital. So stop number two. This was the first job that I ever known, was Audubon Zoo. I got a job. I went to the interview process. The manager loved me. I had a great background. I had a great feeling on everything. He really saw something in me, and I got the job right on the spot. My manager always told me, he was like, don't be nervous about a lot of things, because I wanted to try different things. I wanted to become more than my disability. I wanted to become open. I wanted to face my fears on everything. So we had prep talks. He kept asking me, was like, where do you want to see yourself in a couple of more years? And I told him I wanted to be a leader. And as you know, we're gonna go to the next slide. Later down the couple of years, I became a leader. I was a team lead. I got transferred to the aquarium, working full time with benefits. That's the best thing ever. Also, I stepped more out of my comfort zone. One of my personal goals was to be a cashier. I did wonderful as that. The guest service manager at the aquarium, she has worked with me through a whole lot. She gave me prep talks. She stood by my side on becoming more and being open with your disability. We're gonna go to the next slide. So what does inclusive workplace look like to you? Or maybe does it look like? Okay, I think I see one that says different people working together. Yeah.
This is a great question.
Different people with different ability, using those abilities to the max. I love it. I love it. Supporting one another to see everyone to succeed. I love that one. Okay. Accepting of different viewpoints and understanding that diversity is best outcome. Okay. All position, person, or value. I love that one. Oh, y'all coming with some good ones. I'm loving this. So, ways to make workplace feel inclusive. My job with working with both of the working with the aquarium and working with the zoo, they made me feel comfortable. They share tools with me on how to be succeed. I also had personal goals that I wanted to get done. Wearing a logo and the name tag, you feel important. Like if you're in that room, you feeling you important. Like you're a part of the team. Because when I first, it's a lot. When I first started there, I kind of had the name tag. You don't have to have nobody be like, well, yeah, I'm gonna show you this. As long as you have that logo, they showing you you're a part of the team. Also having the independent, gaining independent as to gain confidence, let your staff be themselves. So they always let me be myself. That's not matter they didn't treat me different because I had a disability, because I wanted to be more than my disability. My goal was to be more than my disability. Don't shortcut me, don't put me in a box, put me with everyone else. Show me that I can become more, show me the ropes and everything else as a normal person. We're gonna move to the next slide.
Well, but before we move on, let me ask you a question, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Personal goals. Let's talk about personal goals for a second as it relates to employment.
Okay.
Do you see a difference in your goals 3 years ago versus your goals today? In other words, when you reach that goal, what happens now?
So I see a whole lot of different. It makes me feel more comfortable because at first, when I first started with Audubon, I didn't want to do nothing. I felt like I was in this box because I was afraid that everyone was going to judge me. I felt like I wasn't going to be mistreated. I was going to be mistreated wrong. But I see a whole lot of different because I'm more open with everything, and I'm willing to try new different things. I mean, we all make mistakes, and I'm gonna say this. I made a whole lot of mistakes. I made a whole lot of mistakes, but making mistakes that make you perfect, and then you learn from them.
But a big part of what we do today is, let's say my goal 3 years ago was to get a job. Well, once I get a job, I set a new goal for me. I want a promotion.
Yeah.
So my point is, we always want more. Am I correct in saying that, Wilbur?
You're definitely correct, sir. You're definitely correct.
So I feel like, especially when we talk about people with disabilities, when we set a goal and they reach it, we kind of have a party for years and years. But in my mind, you celebrate your success, then we create a new bar to reach higher.
The goal is to be more. The goal is to continue elevating. The goal is to continue reaching the steps, continue moving and everything. So to my peers, how can you make your workplace feel more inclusive? So what I said was be open for new changes. It's okay to make mistakes, like I said earlier. Advocate for yourself. Advocate for yourself, because again, nobody's not gonna advocate for you. You have to yourself. Like if you want something different and you want this, you have to speak up and make that change for yourself. Be honest when you're nervous. I'm gonna be real with y'all. I was nervous on a lot of things. Right now, I'm nervous and I don't know why, because I'm used to this. But again, like, you're gonna be nervous on different things. Ask a coworker for new ideas, and ask a coworker for help. And then my most favorite part is have fun and come with a smile. Come with a smile and have fun.
So, Wilbur, let's talk about asking for help for a second. Is it difficult for you to ask for? Did you ever struggle with asking for help?
Never. Because me starting with the zoo and me starting with the aquarium, I have been welcome to ask for help. At first, I'm like, my manager was like, if you need help, ask for help. Let me know if you need help. I mean, he said, if you don't ask for help, how would I know if you're doing it wrong? I mean, you have to ask for help, because again, we all need help in this company. So again, they made me feel welcome. And also working with LSU is they also welcome you with open arms if I needed help. And as you know, Sue Killam is on as my supervisor. So she always volunteers to ask me for different things. She challenged me on a lot of things, but I'm truly grateful. So yeah.
How do you react to making mistakes? Because for me, in my years in management, one thing I did wrong was I beat myself up when I made mistakes, because I felt like I would be judged for making that mistake. Did you ever struggle with that?
Now, making mistakes, I would kind of beat myself up a little bit. I kind of would, because then I'm like, dang, I made that mistake. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, we all make mistakes. Like, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. So again, I just need to learn how to not make this mistake again.
There you go.
So this is one of my favorite quotes, and I take this one because I feel like this is something that is personal to me. The meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of your life is to give it away. What I mean by that is my gift is to help those who get jobs, help those to be a self-advocate if you don't have it. If you don't have the ability to have someone to advocate for you, let me be the one to help you on advocating for yourself. But also the gift that I always use is to give it away and the purpose of a life. So I do want to thank you guys so much for this amazing opportunity.
Thank you, Wilbur.
No worries.
Before I introduce my other friend, I want to say Wilbur is visible on LinkedIn, and Wilbur talks about what he does in the public eye, social media, webinars, and that's one of the things we need to do to move that needle. Now, a friend of mine, Sue Kellum, I want to share. I believe Sue is Wilbert's direct supervisor. Sue and I worked together for a short period of time. And I do need to share this, and this is positive, Sue. Don't be nervous. I'm around a lot of adults without disabilities who are doing programs for people with disabilities. And very seldom, I've never met somebody who believes in people with disabilities like Miss Kellum does. And when I say belief, it's a vibe that you get when you're with that person. When they don't believe, you get that vibe that they don't believe in me. And if that's the case, it's an uphill battle. I can't wait to hear from Sue Kellum. Sue?
Well, thank you, Jeff. That's a very, very nice introduction. And I think I've told you before, but that means an incredible amount coming from you. Yeah, we've had a nice little history together, and I'm glad to see you again. And I'll look forward to keeping in touch with you from here on in. So I'm not going to take a lot of time because, you've heard from Wilbur and you're going to hear from Germaine, and, you've got Jeff helping to facilitate. But I want to say just a couple of things. As Wilbur's supervisor, of course, now I am really focused more and differently on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that hopefully to Jeff's point, I've always valued looking for jobs, employment settings for people with disabilities that exercise diversity, equity, and inclusion before it was the new thing. And I don't think things that are the new thing to mean that there's something wrong with them, but I think we need to know that it's kind of in people's blood rather than just something they do because it's supposed to be the right thing to do. This idea of diversity and equity and inclusion has gained more strength in the last probably 10 years, but even more so in the last 5 years. But to me and to the people I work with, many of my colleagues, this is kind of the hallmark of what we do is for us to make sure that people with disabilities are included, that there's a diversity even of disability, and that they have equitable treatment and that they're included into their work environments. So, I mean, we focus on disability as what we're trying to enhance the diversity of employment settings. But we do look for employers that kind of have that as, the top 10 companies for diversity and those sort of things. Those are important markers. But you also want companies that value that diversity across many, many components like disability or ability, race, gender, religion, nationality, language, sexual orientation, their socioeconomic status or lack of, being poor, those sort of things. Those should be valuable components in any workforce where people are trying to reflect the community around them within their companies. Now, equity, that's equally as important, and it measures ensuring the justice and impartiality and fairness of all employees, regardless of those diversity issues, that everyone should have the same approach to things. They should be included in the same way. So we don't want extra inclusion of people with disability or special inclusion of people with disabilities. We want to make sure it's something that's delivered equitably across those diversity groups. And then the inclusion, of course, I think we kind of all understand that more because it's right there in the term, but it really is a focus on making sure that those diverse individuals feel and are welcomed in all aspects of their job. And that includes decision-making, promotions, social events, or not attending social events, letting the individual tell you whether they feel included. And I think we heard some nice things from Wilbur about whether he felt included at Audubon, and some things about inclusion here at the Human Development Center. So those are to me, what today's topic is about. Germaine has a rich presentation as well that has some really good specifics about how we can ensure that's happening. So I would just kind of say, you have to, be watchful of, we need to be watchful of our assumptions and our what's called implicit biases, which really kind of also translate to stereotypes. Sometimes we don't know they exist on some of these groups or to the extent that they exist. And I think my grandmother would say, always go back to that golden rule. I think we've all heard it, the do unto others thing, but treat other people the way you want to be treated. It's a complicated issue, but it's really a simple value to have. And if you can do that, I think for yourself, for your workplace, and for if you work, if you're an employer here and you're looking to hire, that you have that as your value. And if you're someone with a disability looking for a job, make sure you go to a job site where people are going to treat you the way that they want to be treated, that, it's going to be fair and equitable and inclusive. So I'm going to not take any more of Germaine's time. I'm going to let this go on, and I'm really glad you're all here, and it's been nice to see you all.
Thank you, Ms. Kellum. One thing before I announce my friend Germaine is the one thing that shoots out at me about LSUHSC, and I want to thank them, is when you talk employment in the disability community, people go to being a greeter, they go to being a bagger. Well, Sue, that door's open. Everything's on the table with LSUHSC. And for that, I want to thank you for your passion and your hard work. So thank you, Sue. Now, I had the privilege of working with Ms. Townsend last year. We actually did this seminar last year together, and we clicked like peanut butter and jelly. So I'm really honored, and one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about Ms. Townsend and Sherm is I can remember being in an advocacy meeting back in Louisiana, and I said, what we're talking about, we're talking to each other. What we need to do is get out there and talk to people who don't know about people with disabilities. And that's part of what we're doing now. With further ado, Ms. Townsend, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I am honored to be a part of today's discussion. I think that every person who is on the panel is bringing some valid and valuable information to the attendees. I'm honored to represent the New Orleans Society for Human Resource Management chapter. I serve on their board as the DEI director. I'm a human resource professional. I've been in human resources for over 8 years. And as Jeff was saying, it's great to have the conversations within the disability community, but being able to reach outside of self and tap into HR professionals and business owners and people who can actually do the work in concert with advocates is really important in this work. So yeah, I'm hoping that today you guys will get some valuable tools that you can use to create and sustain diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces. We'll talk about, giving your gift, finding your gift and giving your gift. And so I think that my gift is I'm just an innate teacher by nature, not by profession, but I'm always teaching and coaching and looking for ways to empower people and encourage them to do more. And so I'm here to give my gift to you guys today, and I'm hoping you'll get some valid information. That's my intention. So I think what's important for us all to understand is developing a work culture. Now we're talking about, when you go to work and everybody is winning, it's going to require some intentionality, meaning I've got to make sure that my intention every day, even when it's not an easy day, is to win. And so I'm going to talk about some steps that you can take in your workplace, in your organization, to create more inclusive environments where everybody does win. So step one, and Sue started talking about some of these definitions. We always hear these terms, diversity, equity, inclusion. What does it all really mean, right? And so Sue did speak about some clinical definitions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'll just delve a little more deeper into that because I think it's important for us all to be clear in our language. What does your organization view diversity, equity, inclusion as? And then are you putting that statement on your websites when you're doing recruiting? Do your employees know what your DEI statement is? What does it stand for within your organization? And if the answer to that is no, then it's time for you to get clear on these terms, right? So, I mean, diversity is a given. Everybody is diverse. If you look at the panel, we're all diverse. We all come from different backgrounds. We all are different genders, different races. We have different nationalities. Our socioeconomic status is different. Some of us speak different languages. We have different religions, different political perspectives. So diversity is always going to be a given. In every situation, there's diversity. Equity is promoting justice, impartiality, and fairness within our processes, our procedures. This is more of a judicial term that you talk of. A lot of people think about equity as being equality, but it's not the same. When you're tackling equity issues, you need to understand some root causes that cause some disparities within these diverse groups. And then we can fight for equity when we understand some things that cause inequity in our system. So we're looking at procedures, processes, and the distribution of resources when we're talking about equity. And I'll talk more about that later on as we delve a little deeper in the conversation. And then inclusion, it's just the outcome to where everybody who is diverse actually feels like they're welcome, that they can come to work as themselves, right? Bringing the full self to work and feeling like their voice is being heard. What's really important when we're wanting to make an inclusive environment for people with disabilities is using people first language. People first language, and you guys have probably heard of it before. It's a way of speaking in which the person that is speaking is putting the person that is put before the disability to avoid marginalization or dehumanization. So I don't want to say that something, I'm going to give you some examples. So I don't want to say a negative phrase would be someone's retarded or mentally defective. I don't want to say that. That's negative and it's dehumanizing. So what I would say is a person with an intellectual or a cognitive or developmental disability. That's an affirmative phrase that I could use for that person. We're going to emphasize the person before the disability. So for example, a person who is blind or people with spinal cord injuries. Your identify first language, it's going to put the disability first in the description people first, our identity first language is equally appropriate depending on the personal preference. So you always want to ask somebody, how do you identify? Self-identification is very important. Even outside of when you're dealing with someone with disability, always ask how they self-identify. When you're dealing with people within the LGBTQ community, how do you identify? Some people identify as they or him or her or she. And so you want to use that people first language, even when dealing with people without a developmental disability or the like, right? So when you're using, instead of saying a negative phrase, oh, he suffers from a hearing loss, it's a person who is hard of hearing. Instead of a negative phrase of being someone who is afflicted by MS, then you talk about a person who has multiple sclerosis. And so the same thing of people with cerebral palsy. And so using people first language is very important to make sure that we're focused on the humanity of people and not their disability. So when we're talking about inclusion, we talked about what it looked like. And I want to talk about what does inclusivity feel like in the workplace. And so we've all been to high school dances and, you know, everybody's just kind of standing around the room, right? We all bought a ticket to go to the dance. So we're there. We can go back. Yeah, good. So we're there, but then do I feel like I can get on the dance floor and actually dance? Did someone actually ask me to dance? And that's where you feel included, when you're on the dance floor and you're dancing and everybody's just like, you know, coming together as one. So this is an opportunity for you guys to give me a little feedback. When we talked about what it looked like, what does inclusion feel like for you when you're in the workplace? And I'll give you a few minutes to put that in the chat so we can talk about it. Everyone feels valued. And I like that you say that, Kate, but what's important to understand is value is defined individually. So your definition of value could be different from my definition of value. So there may be instances in the workplace where you feel valued, but I don't feel valued. And so we need to have that conversation, right? Yeah. You're listening to what I say. Yes, Jeff, that's perfect, on point. Not only listening to what I say, but I feel like you have empathy for me. We're working together as a team. Yeah. And I'm a contributing member of that team. Spot on, Pat. People feel more comfortable. They feel they can be themselves. Your opinion matters. Yes. When I say something, right? If I tell you something that's making me not feel inclusive, what do you do with that information? You know, is it just kind of swept under the rug and, oh, well, it's okay. Don't worry about that. Oh, that's not the way it is. Or is someone actively engaging and saying, why do you feel that way? And what can we do to make that change, right? Or what are we doing that may be causing you to feel this way? And then how can we change the way we're doing something to make you feel differently? Authentic and vulnerable in the workplace. Yes. And that's where what Wilbert was talking about is being an advocate for yourself when you are not feeling authentic, when you don't feel like you can be vulnerable. Are you comfortable in going to your HR professional or to your middle manager and saying, hey, this situation that happened really didn't feel right to me. And this is how I experienced what was said or what was done. And so then you're having the conversation about it. And we'll talk about courageous conversations later on. Thank you guys so much for engaging in the chat. We're going to move on to the next slide. Recognize the intentional step part 2 is recognizing that building an inclusive organization is everybody's job, right? It's not just the employer's job. It's not just your job as the employee. But we've got to have a concerted effort in building this inclusive organization, because the key to inclusion is in creating an environment where everybody feels welcome, they feel valued, and they feel supported. And that supported piece is very important when you're building an inclusive organization. I like to look at equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion as rungs on a ladder. And so as you are building your ladder, you're stepping up the rungs of the ladder. And then as we're talking about a building, we start with a foundation, right? And then we're building upon that foundation. So remember, step one was getting clearly defined on our language and what diversity, equity, and inclusion means for the organization. And then step two is helping everybody to understand what their role is. And I wrote a note down. I want to find my note because I think that's very important. This is when everybody understands the company's philosophy, and not only that, but how their individual role impacts the creation of that inclusive environment. So everybody plays a role in it, even the janitor, even the person who feels like, you know, I don't really matter. My job is really menial in this job. No, everybody is important in creating an inclusive environment, because it only takes one person with a negative attitude or a negative disposition about inclusion or to wreck the whole plan. So it's important that everybody takes responsibility in their role and how it impacts. Next slide. So the intentional step 3 is, from an organizational standpoint, you need to understand where you are now and where you want to be. One of the first things that organizations should do when they're getting ready to roll out diversity initiatives is to do a needs assessment. So you want to do a survey within your organization to find out, hey, let's figure out where we are, uncovering the gaps, and you know, how does our organization feel, right? What is the experience of our employees? Questions like, when was the last time you did an engagement survey? To find out how the pulse of your people, your culture assessments, finding out what the organizational culture is, and if it is where you are now, and then how does it mirror where you wanting to be, and then you map out the steps to make the change. Next slide. So who might organizational practices and traditions be excluding? Now, before you raise your hand in chat, I want to speak to that a little bit, because a lot of times there are some internal practices that organizations are doing that they may not even understand or recognize that could be causing people to self-exclude. What if in every commercial that you see of this particular company, you know, they're all able-bodied people and everybody seems to look different from me, so I'm not even going to apply at that place because it doesn't even look like, I don't see representation of me there. So what are some organizational practices and traditions that could be excluding people? Why don't you guys chat about that now in your organizations where you may have worked or are currently working? Who might some of the organizational practices that you see be excluding in those organizations that you worked at or are currently working for? Raise your hand if you have a story. Nobody's got a story? That's okay. I'll share one. So in your organizational practices and traditions, things that could be excluding people, look at your workplace architecture. Are there accessibility ramps? Do you have 10 floors and there's no elevator? Or the elevator, there's only one elevator that works and it's really not even big enough for a wheelchair to roll into, right? So then how would someone, a person who is using a wheelchair, how would they be able to get to your organization, or where's the accessibility there? So that's some of the things that you want to look at, right? Examine some of those practices, right? consider who they may or may not exclude. I can even talk to job postings. So is there language that would exclude a person with a disability in your job postings? I pulled up a few job postings and I was looking at, and this was just on Indeed. And so a lot of times the organizations, they want to make their job postings really short. It's more like a little snippet of the job. I want to entice you to apply. But if you're not being intentional about putting some of the physical demands of that role, some of the what's the work environment, there are people who have some developmental disabilities that need to know what the physical demands of the job are. And then if I can look at what the physical demands are, then I can see, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Don't wait until the interview stage and then that person is excluded because of whatever that physical demand may be. So it's very important looking at your job postings and you're having the right ADA language in your job posting. Review your application. So what systematic barriers might a person with a disability face when applying? When you're looking at making a workplace that is inclusive for everybody, you want to look from the hiring process, the full scope of that process, from the application to selection. How could there be systematic barriers that would cause a person with a disability to have a problem even applying? Do you have posters that's telling people who may need accommodations how to get that, right? Is there a Braille application for people who are blind, right? Who have a visible disability? What about people who have a reading disability? Are there things in place to help that individual to apply for those jobs? And then back to your job postings, reviews for those job postings and determine, you should review job postings every 6 months to make sure that everything that is in there is really, really required on that job. A lot of times you'll see that I'm talking about we're talking about accessibility today, but I think about sometimes there are educational requirements that are on job descriptions that may disqualify people. You may say you've got to have a bachelor's degree when in essence, a high school diploma would be sufficient for that role. So looking at those processes, reviewing those to make sure that you're not putting a barrier in place that doesn't need to be there. Yes. So Pat says positions that require an applicant to transport others. We need to ensure that this is clearly stated on the job posting. Yes, that's very important. Do we have anybody else? And forgive me. Yeah, go ahead.
Germaine, I got several things going through my little head. Courageous conversations. I would like to share a story, if you don't mind,
Don't mind at all.
Of how people with disabilities in leadership react to who they're leading. Let me give you something that happened to me 2 weeks ago. I gave direction in a professional capacity, and the individual whispered to his peers that said, "What did he say?" And I heard that. A, it rubbed me wrong. B, it was unprofessional. C, I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I took ownership of being a leader and said, what do I need to do now? And I got rid of all the personal animosity. And a week later, I went to that individual and I said, look, I realize when I speak, sometimes you don't understand me. What do we need to do to work together? Because it's my job to give you clear direction on what I need you to do. In my opinion, it's my job to let you know it's okay to say, Jeff, would you mind repeating yourself? Sometimes I think we are scared. I'm talking about people with and without disabilities. We are afraid to have these conversations. But I hear all the time, let's walk in their shoes. Well, let me play devil's advocate. Let me walk in your shoes and let me give you direction and feel like I don't know what he said. What do I do? What do you think about that, Germaine?
I think that was great, courageous of you, because a lot of times we feel like we might be offending that person, and so we don't want to say something. But in fact, and when we don't say something, or when we don't say we didn't understand what you were saying, it makes you feel like, oh man, what can I do here? And you, like you said, you had to go and look at yourself and recenter, and then come back and have a courageous conversation. But you having that courageous conversation gave that individual the permission the next time that you said something that they didn't quite understand, to then be able to say, hey, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat that for me, Jeff? Right. And
Right.
so I think that's great. And that's exactly what this work is all about. Number one, you've got to give yourself some grace, because we're not going to always get it right. There are going to be some times when we get it wrong. When you're making these intentional steps, you might map out a plan for the next 6 months, and you think this is the course that the organization is going to be on. And then you might get 3 months down the line, do a survey and realize, you know what, this is not really hitting the way we wanted it to. And so now we've got to go back and redo some things. We've got to course correct. And so you've got to give yourself the grace to do that, and to realize that nobody's perfect. There is no expert in DE&I. So I do not like when people say they're a DEI expert. This work changes all the time. 10 years ago, it was diversity. 5 years ago, it was diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now it's diversity, equity, belonging, and then there's diversity, equity, and accessibility. Then there's diversity, equity, justice. It's constantly evolving. And so we see that we're looking at this work from a multiple set of lenses. We've got to give ourselves grace to make mistakes, course correct, have courageous conversations, and then don't be offended. So good job for you not to be offended, right? When it did happen, and being able to go back. So I think that's great.
And I think that's one of my messages towards people with disabilities, is realizing when we go into the workplace, we are going to enter. We're going to have uncomfortable situations. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. But guess what? It's the way it is. So I wanted to ask you one other question. I could talk to you all day. I've been in a lot of situations with training. I've been a trainer. I've been trained. And when a company decides to hire people with disabilities, I have strong feelings of that's great. But guess what? They're not the ones doing the training. So we need to get the wonderful message down to the ground zero, where we have that 18-year-old doing the training. And somehow we need to set the tone for that comfort level to be there. Because day one sets the tone. If your training is uncomfortable, you're fighting an uphill battle.
I agree. And so one of the things we talked about, and before I go into this slide, one of the things we talked about is in building a workplace of inclusivity is understanding where your organization is and where they want to go. A lot of companies will put out a DE&I statement, But making a statement is one thing, but making real change is going to be hard. So that's why you've got to be intentional. Where is your DEI statement? Is it on your job postings? And then are you recruiting people who share the same values within the company? To Jeff's point about the training piece, your middle managers are the ones that need to be trained. It's not about CEO and the higher C-level suite going to training. Yes, I'm saying they do need training, but your middle manager is going to be the leaders that have the most impact within the organization. So they need consistent and regular training, not just one unconscious bias training and then you think, oh, they got it. No, it's got to be reinforced because we all have unconscious and conscious biases that'll come out because of the way that we were raised or the environments that we grew up in, stereotypes that everybody has, that we bring with us into the workplace. And so consistent and regular training is what is needed for middle management leaders and also for your employees as a whole, so that you're regularly talking about what your initiative, what your company stance on DE&I is, and then you're reinforcing that through the training. Something that you can also do when you're preparing your DEI initiative, you can do adverse impact analysis. So looking at different processes within the organization, and there's an analysis. It's a tool that HR professionals can use to see where your practices may be causing an adverse impact on different marginalized groups. And they could be racial inequities, it could be gender inequity, it could be accessibility inequity. So you want to look at where the adverse impact is happening within those particular groups, and then be intentional again about making the changes. And so one other thing I wanted to say is that you can also look at who's not represented in your organization. Are there aspects of what you're currently doing that is preventing these people from being a part of your organization? And then how do you remove those barriers? I wanted to put that in the previous slide, but I made sure to highlight it in this one. And then another thing with the consistent training, the Job Accommodation Network is very, very good. It's a free resource that is available for everyone. It's jan.org, JAN.org, and they'll talk about different workplace accommodations. So they'll also talk about different issues that may have happened that they've already had solutions for. So when you're having these conversations with people with a disability, you can look at some of the things on jan.org about accommodations. Most accommodations don't cost anything, but it's just a matter of you researching. And then some of the costly accommodations really don't cost that much. It might be $500, right? Now, if the accommodation is really going to be taxing for the employer, then you need to have the conversation. But at least do your due diligence in researching. So the Job Accommodation Network is a great resource for anyone who's wanting to really be intentional about hiring people with disabilities.
I've got to add this because that's one of my pet peeves, and I got a bunch of them. When companies hear the word accommodation, they automatically think dollar signs. First off, there's a way to get that paid for. Second off, the word accommodation to me means let's step back and think together about what we need right now for this to work. It might be a simple piece of Velcro. It's amazing how a simple piece of Velcro can turn a job description around.
Thank you for sharing that, Jeff. I just love that you've got a story for every. So what that tells me, Jeff, is that you have experienced a lot, and that's why you're so valuable on these type of panels, because you've experienced a lot. And I think as professionals in the workplace, if there are any HR professionals that are on the line, on the panel, on the webinar today, it's important for us to understand that people with disabilities, they've been dealing with these disabilities for their whole entire life. And so when you're wanting to have the conversation and open the dialogue, ask them, what do you need in order to be successful in this role? They'll tell you. And then be intentional about, hey, well, this is what we can do about that, right? It requires the courageous conversation. Right, Jeff?
And I also like to add, we as people with disabilities need to take ownership of this. And I'm looking in the mirror. I need to figure out what I need before I can go to my boss and say I need something, because they don't know what I need. I know what I need. So I need to empower myself to use my voice and put it all on the table.
Yes, you need to be your biggest advocate in the workplace. If you don't say it, I can't read your mind. I don't know, right? And I mean, that's for everybody, even, people with disabilities, people without. You need to be your strongest advocate. HR professionals, your middle manager, your leader, your CEO, they cannot read minds. So you've got to be courageous in your conversations in the workplace. So let's talk about some microaggressions, because a lot of times what happens when we get on the job, the reason why I wanted to talk about the job postings and the hiring and the selection process, a lot of times companies will set D&I initiatives and they'll say one of the metrics they want to meet is we want to hire more diverse work people, a more diverse group of individuals. Well, if your intention is to hire more people with disabilities, and the people with disabilities that are working at the job feel like they're looking for their next opportunity because it's not really all that inclusive, then why would you want to bring more people on board? So it's important to understand what microaggressions look like and how they may show up in the workplace, and then how you address those. And so I want to give you guys, I want to talk about some examples of microaggressions towards a person with disability. And so do you guys have an experience that you can speak to about a microaggression that may have shown up for you? I can say one of the things that, while you guys are putting it in the chat, one of the things that I've experienced that I view it's a microaggression. A lot of times people will say, oh, you're so articulate. And I'm thinking, all right, am I not supposed to be? So that could be a microaggression. So why would you view me as not being someone? Why would you not expect me to be articulate? Right? And that's a microaggression, because some people view African Americans as being unlearned. Right. And so when they experience someone who is learned or speaks articulately, and it's not meant to be, microaggressions are sometimes overt, but there are some of them that are not overt. They're not meant to offend, but we need to be it's intended to be a compliment, but it doesn't come off as a compliment. And so the person who's giving it may have want to compliment you, but the person who receives it doesn't receive it as a compliment.
It's so kind of like somebody saying, wow, Jeff, you drive?
There you go.
Right?
Yep. And then you're like, yeah, don't you? So it's important when you see something, you say something. So some of the examples of disability microaggressions in everyday life. Oh, I can't believe you're married. Right? Come on now, we all have some disability. So, and I think that when you say things like that, we're trying to make that person feel at ease. But the message that you're giving is that your thoughts or feelings are probably not real and certainly not important to me, right? Because I mean, we all deal with the same things. And then you might have a denial of their privacy, someone asking what happened to you, right? Someone going to Jeff and saying, "Ooh, what happened to you?" Maintaining disability information should be a private factor. I don't need to know what happened to Jeff. And then helplessness, right? A lot of people feel like people who have a disability are helpless. Someone helps you on the bus or the train, even when you don't need help. Or someone feels like, feels incapable of rescuing you from your disability. Has anyone ever said to you, I'd rather be dead than to be you? Yes. Or you can't do anything by yourself. So we're going to move on to creating performance objectives. Yeah, what's wrong with you? So creating performance objectives around DE&I. So there are things that an organization can do so that you're making sure that you're moving that needle within your organization. So anything that is measured can be obtained. Most goals need to be measured within an organization. And so some DEI metrics could be the demographics across your organizational levels. How many people of color, how many people with disability are you employing? Retention across your employee groups, not only how many, when you're looking at the demographics, then how many of those people are actually staying? And then how long have they been there? You know, if you are hiring people with disabilities, how long have they been with the organization? Is it 6 months, a year? And if you've had someone there for 5 years or longer, then you need to be celebrating that. Also looking at your employee turnover, and remember we talked about that adverse impact analysis. Part of that is looking at your turnover and seeing what demographic of employees are leaving the organization, and then uncovering why. Are you doing exit interviews to get to the root cause of some of the turnover that's happening within the organization? Looking at the adverse impact is another DEI metric. Looking at candidate demographics. So what type of people are applying for the jobs that you post? And if it's all one type of individuals, then, or individuals within a certain group are the only ones that are applying, then either you need to widen your net, meaning that you've got to find other pools of candidates. Maybe you need to put your job posting in a different area. So it's reaching other diverse candidates, different candidates. And then you could also look at promotion rates, employee advancement, promotion rates. You can look at your pay, equal pay and pay equity within the organization. You can look at that. Do you guys have any employee resource groups? And if they've been created, then what's the participation rate in those groups? So these are all performance-based objectives that are around DE&I that organizations can put into place to make sure that these initiatives are making some impact within the organization. So I want to talk about some activities that foster inclusion. And these are things that everybody can take a part in. Challenge yourself to listen to their story. Find someone at your job that has a different background than you, and go out to lunch with them. Have coffee with them, and find out about them and how their lives have been shaped by the different experiences that they've had. I can remember I was getting ready to post a Black History Month post at the beginning of February, and then it dawned on me that it was Chinese New Year. And so I was like, oh, wait, I don't want to exclude anyone within my circle that may be celebrating Chinese New Year. So I took time to go and research Chinese New Year and find out where did it come from and why do they do that? And what are some of the things that are celebrated during Chinese New Year? And so when I made my post about Chinese New Year first, and then I made a post about Black History Month because it was important for me to include people outside of my circle. And so find out how they feel. When something happens, if you are in a group of individuals and maybe you're in a meeting or in a setting, you might be in the break room and someone says something that could be viewed as a microaggression. That's why constant training is important. You should take it upon yourself to go to that person and after the meeting and say, hey, I heard that comment about you being very articulate. How did that make you feel? I just want you to know I noticed it, and I just want to make sure that you understand that I value you, and it kind of didn't rub me the right way, and I want to make sure you're okay. And then to confront the stereotypes head on. So then you could maybe go to that person who said that comment and say, hey, you know what? I went to Germaine after you said that, and I just wanted to check in with her to find out how that made her feel. I don't know if you understood that's not really a compliment, and confronting it, right? And then walking in somebody else's shoes. And that can be both sides, rather someone who is like you, when you're looking at people outside of yourself and have difference from you, walk in their shoes. If it's a person with disability, think about exactly how much effort it took for them to get to work and to put in that 100% and being available to whatever the company is looking for. And then celebrate that and let them know, you know what, I appreciate everything that you've done. I thank you, for being present here at work. And I'm so happy to see the value that you bring to the organization. And then bring bias to the forefront. When it shows up, you want to be able to say something. And we talked about the unconscious bias. If you've not had some training on unconscious bias, you need to do that, because it will talk about some of the stereotypes that we just grew up knowing. I mean, it was programmed within our psyche from when we were young. And as we are older, we play out those things because our minds have been programmed a certain way, but we can always reprogram and relearn things. And that's all about bringing bias to the forefront, confronting stereotypes, and changing our mindset about people, places, and things that are different from us. Next slide. And then this work never stops. Just like the ladder has many rungs that keep going up and up and up, the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion does not stop. And I want to challenge all of you to never stop beating the drum, never stop being an advocate for yourself, and always, always, always be a strong voice for the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Never stop beating the drum.
Thank you, Germaine. That was incredible. Never stop beating the drum. It's so important for me as an individual with a disability to realize that it's never going to be 100%. Never. And that's got to be okay. Just move that needle. Right now, I'd like to take the opportunity to invite our speakers to turn their camera on. And let's have a brief discussion. I do have a question for Wilbert. Wilbert, you there, buddy?
I'm here.
All right, buddy. Thanks again for showing up. Thank everybody. Wilbert, in your slide, you talked about being afraid. In your early years, what were you scared of, briefly?
Telling people I had a disability, because I was afraid that people were gonna treat me different. I was afraid that people were gonna single me out and people were gonna leave me wrong. So I would come up with all these excuses, not telling people I had a disability, but a lot of people said, we notice that you have a disability and this and that. But then I came to a point that you're gonna have to tell other people you have a disability, because again, you've lived with this all your life. So you basically gotta tell it. So my dad made me feel more comfortable to tell people I had a disability and just be myself every day.
Thank you, Wilbert, and thank you again. I can't thank y'all enough. We got 2 or 3 minutes, so let me just ask the group, where do we go from here? How do we make this a priority?
I don't know if that's something you want the group to chat about, but while they're putting it in the chat, I'll say that, it's really important that we build an internal infrastructure within the organization that's going to support the DEI initiatives. So identify DEI champions and advocates at all levels within the organization. And that's where your employee resource groups come into play. If you know someone who is really has a strong passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion, let that person be a champion in the organization. Put them on a committee, give them work to do, and encourage them to get together a group of individuals that can help you navigate and move the needle. And then training. Everybody in the organization should be having training. DEI training should be mandatory for everybody.
I love it. I love it. So do you have any closing remarks?
Wow. You know, I just want to say that, you know, I learned so much today from Wilbert and Germaine and from you. I think all of us can take that as a lesson, that you just have to be a sponge for this stuff. Don't assume you know everything about it. Like Germaine said, nobody's an expert. Talk to people. What you think might be the way to approach it might not be the way the person wants. I think it's very, it's constantly evolving, very dynamic, and you just have to be really aware of it, cognizant of other people's needs, and just, it's constant. It's not something you do every Monday or once a month or quarterly meeting. It's like Germaine said in her slide, it's all the time. You have to beat the drum.
Wow, thank you. I want to remind everybody to check out our future upcoming schedule. We got, I think, 4 or 5 more. We'd be glad to have y'all sign up. At this time, I would like to just recap what we learned. You know, tell us in the chat box what you learned. I mean, what are our takeaways? And I hope to see y'all in a few weeks. Again, check out our schedule. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Laura.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. Coming back on camera here. This was so rich. I was taking notes. I'm sure lots of people joined me in that. So much to learn and such a great foundation for the rest of the series. I really want to thank our panel today for all the extra work they put in on top of their jobs to make this such a rich session today. Please put any questions that you might have in the chat, because we really do have a couple minutes to answer some questions. I did want to also let everyone know that post event today, you will be receiving a survey. We'd love for you to fill that out. It helps to inform the rest of the series, the things that really worked well for you, the things you'd like to see more of in the upcoming events. We'd love to hear from you. You will be getting a recording of the event as well. Also, the PowerPoint slide is available. We'll be sharing the website where you can actually go on and get your resources for the entire series. That also allows you to go back and get some of the resources and event information from the events that you did not get to attend. So make sure you look for those events as well. And definitely do take the time to fill out the survey for us. That would be really great for us to have input as we move forward. The event, as you'll see over in the chat, we did put the event survey. You can access that now, which would be great. We really appreciate some input quickly from our guests today. Also, you will see in the chat the registration link for all the other webinars. Copy that and send that to some of your peers. We'd love to invite more folks to the presentations that we have through June. You'll see some of these folks that are on the call again in our future events. So if you enjoyed their input, you'll get to see them again. We really want to take the time to thank you. First of all, again, thank you for the presenters. I know you all thoroughly enjoyed their input. Please give them a shout out in the chat if you have any positive comments for them. Also want to thank you. I know it's a busy work day for so many people. Thank you for signing in and being with us. It made the conversation richer, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next event. I do want to remind you that Thursday is going to be a complete repeat of this, It will be a little bit different because we'll have different participants. So we'd love to have you attend again if you'd like to. If not, please share with a colleague that they have the opportunity to see this presentation again on Thursday. And then you can also register for our upcoming event in April. And also we have one event in May and another 2 in June. So we look forward to seeing you again in our next presentation webinar. Have a great day.